My life in Sarasota County began in 1980. I moved here 34 years ago, right after college, graduated from the University of Maryland. I immediately began a 20-year career in local journalism with a small-town newspaper in Venice. Has anyone heard of the Venice Gondolier? Funny name for a newspaper, and I had to figure out what that was when I first got there. What's a gondolier? It's a boat, and the guy who runs the boat. So I worked for them. The Suncoast Media Group is the official name. Over the years, I was a reporter, an editor, opinion page writer, photographer. I covered hundreds and hundreds of hours, literally, of county commission meetings, city council meetings in Venice, school board meetings, planning commission meetings, zoning appeals meetings. I probably spent most of my young life sitting in meetings. What a waste of time. No. But anyway, back then, when you covered meetings, it was old-style journalism. You didn't have the internet, you didn't have Wikipedia, you had the library, and you had people, and you had to talk to everyone, and you had to get the answers from individuals. And I think that's missing in a lot of journalism we see today. Not to be critical of what I read, but on television you see a lot of entertainment. It's infotainment more than real journalism. But what I learned, it was an incredible in-the-field education. It's been invaluable for the rest of my life and my career. And this education, I feel, will help me as a public servant on the Sarasota County Commission. I met all the administrators back then, the elected officials, Bob Anderson, Eugene Matthews, Mabry Carlton, great people. I met department heads, staff, and I learned a lot about the issues in depth from the very start of the first planning, state planning act in 1985. I was involved in that as a 27-year-old young man. Since then, I've gotten a family, settled down, live in Gulf Gate East. I have a 20-year volunteer career at the Little League and also the soccer league and the YMCA basketball program, but mostly Little League. I've been on the board there for the last 3 years. I've been a coach, a team manager. I love working with kids. My own kids have all been through the program. I have a 22-year-old graduate from Sarasota Military Academy, 2 younger boys who are 12 and 14. They both attend Pine View School. That's from their mothers at intelligence, not mine. And I believe in helping our youth. And I think one thing you have in this community that's amazing, and I've been there only twice now, and I really want to go the next season, is the Miracle League, which you guys have supported with your program here in the field. It's just an amazing tribute to the kids who can't play at the Little League fields, but who still want to play and love baseball. For the past 9 years, I worked as the communications director at the Sarasota Association of Realtors. And I started there in 2005. 2006 was when the real estate industry kind of changed, and I wasn't responsible for that. I just want you to be sure of that. I tried to help inform and educate the real estate professionals and the public regarding ethical conduct of realtors, private property rights, the importance of the real estate community, and development in general to our local economy. And we've seen what happened in 2006 through 2010. When the real estate industry gets a cold, everyone gets sick. Every industry gets affected in some way, shape, or form. The trades are affected, obviously. We lose construction jobs, but restaurants are affected. Jobs disappear. I believe my experiences, my skill sets will help me as a county commissioner for District 4. We've already seen many examples in the last few years of where an investigative reporter, someone with my type of background, might have been very beneficial on the county board. The purchasing department, and I won't go into great detail, but we know what happened with the purchasing department 3 years ago. Hints of that were around for 5, 6 years, probably even before that. Nothing was done. Someone on the board who would investigate, would ask questions, would get answers, demand answers, may have prevented what happened there. The current I-75 interchange, what's going to happen just down the road from us? We don't know how bad it's going to get. We hope it's not going to be as bad as some people forecast, but generally those are types of things, you need to plan ahead for that. Obviously we knew what was going to happen at that interchange when we approved a regional mall, when we approved Villages of Lakewood Ranch South, and all the other things, the vendors in development. If you don't improve the roads ahead of that, you're going to have traffic jams. And that's unfortunate because we have some good things going out there that could help us and be pro-development. Thank you very much.
And last in this group, we have Lourdes Ramirez.
Good evening. My name is Lourdes Ramirez. You know, one of my favorite documents starts with "we the people." It doesn't start with "we the corporations," "we the special interest," or "we with the political influence." It's "we the people." And we need elected officials to remember those words. And I've lived by those words. Even recently, I'll tell you what I've done as a running for office. There's two ways to get on the ballot. One is to pay $5,000 filing fee, and the second way is to get 3,000 signatures on petitions to get on the ballot. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication. And I'm the only candidate in the county commission that managed to get the 3,000 signatures to get on the ballot and avoid that $5,000 fee. I could have paid it, but I wanted to do it the old-fashioned way. And I was able to save that money in the long run. So to prove that I'm fiscally responsible, that's one recent evidence of my efforts. Now, I, like many of you, started to be more engaged in the community when I started seeing things happen in my backyard. I live on Siesta Key, in a little cottage there, and I started seeing things being overly developed. And so I joined the Siesta Key Association in 2003, and stayed on that board for 9 years, 5 of which I was its president. In 2010, I became president of CONA, that stands for Council of Neighborhood Associations. We represent 70 neighborhoods throughout Sarasota County, which are about 35,000 citizens. So for 12 years, I've been involved in land use issues. I was involved when the county was doing the overhaul of the zoning code update. Tax issues. When I heard back in 2005 that the county had 2 HR departments. One was called performance management, and they were doing things like workshops every day. Free workshops based on the taxpayers were actually paying for it. Things like mocktails, how to do cocktails without alcohol, or how to deal with difficult children. I started to speak up because I said, that's our tax dollars. Those might be good workshops if you want to pay for it, but not with our tax dollars. So I was very vocal, even back in 2005, on how the county was spending our money. I believe that the county has to be more transparent. Only 1% of the county commission's emails are online. We need all of the county commission's emails online so we can see how they're communicating with different people, and you'll know what's going on in the county commission. Public records. I believe that we need to make it very easy. Many of you might have heard that I spent 2 days going through public records in the county, and they made it very difficult for me. I had to go out of my way and look through files instead of giving me digital copies. They should make it easier for the public to access public records. I believe we need an ethics commission, something elected to oversee the county commission, or all elected officials, because I think we need an oversight. And to try to bring trust back to the county, we need an ethics commission. We need to be fiscally responsible for our tax dollars. I don't know if you're aware. Now, besides the fact that we're going to be losing money in 2017, we'll be facing a deficit, but we have some major projects that need to be done. The sheriff's office has a $16 million project that needs to be done because their system, communication system, is 16 years old. I don't have one piece of equipment at home that's 16 years old. So they're basing their communication on something that's so old they can't even find parts. So we need to be really conscious of how we spend our money at the county level, because we're facing this deficit, yet we have some major projects coming along. I believe we need to diversify our economy. Now, the current model we have right today is not working. Do you know that 50% of our school children is on free and subsidized lunches? That's because their parents are not earning enough. So we need higher paying jobs. I have a master's in business administration, so I understand that we need to grow, but we have to be smart about it. We need to be smart about it. We have to be really financially responsible. So, as a fiscal conservative with extensive now when he gives me the timer, I'm going to try to talk really fast. With extensive business experience and really strong community involvement, I know I could be your voice. And I hope you vote for me on August 26th. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the candidates for county commissioner? If not, we'll move on to the... I'm sorry, yes.
What is your view about the 2050 plan? Are you planning to, would you like to keep it as it is, or to weaken it.
Okay, I wish I had an hour to talk to you about the 2050 plan. I do not support the changes of Sarasota 2050. That is one of the things I've been working on for the past 2 years, trying to give the county that the 2050 plan as it was before, was fine. We don't need to change it, especially the fiscal neutrality, which says that the county currently requires the new development pays for the infrastructure it needs. And that's what they agreed to back in 2004 when it was adopted, and when a lot of these developments, including Lakewood Ranch South in 2010 got approved, they agreed to those terms. Now they want to change that so that we wind up paying for their infrastructure because they can't afford it. It's a burden to the development community, and I don't want it to be a burden to us. So I do not support any changes to 2050.
Yes.
I have just the opposite point of view. I have told the Planning Commission and I've told the Sarasota County Board of County Commissioners that the 2050 plan with what I call the fiscal neutrality nonsense needs to be scrapped.
Would you like to
And I have recommended.
Would you like to use the mic?
Sure.
It doesn't.
It's not that, that's right. Sorry.
And I have recommended to the Sarasota County that they go to a total planned community plan east of the interstate, similar to what we have here in the Meadows. And I live on the Palmer Ranch, which is also a total planned community. And what they need to do is master plan the utilities and roads and adjust the impact fees accordingly. And with the 2050 plan, I don't know whether you realize it, but the 2050 plan has been in effect here in Sarasota County for the past 8 years. There's been one development in Sarasota County in the past 8 years, and thank God it was affordable housing. We have no affordable housing. The county's definition of affordable housing is somebody at the poverty level. My definition of affordable housing is something that everybody in this room can afford. And that's what we have on the Palmer Ranch, that's what we have here in the Meadows. And what has happened with the 2050 plan, there's been no development. Sarasota County has negative revenue coming in. Sarasota County is broke. They have, all that they have in emergency funds is 75 days and for emergency funds. I can tell you from my experience as chief engineer in the Department of Public Utilities in Cleveland, Ohio, we had what they call no storm plan. It occurred on a Friday evening, and we depleted all of the funds that we had for that and then some in just that weekend and following 4 days. And that's the situation Sarasota County is in. What you're looking at with the 2050 plan, with the fiscal neutrality, is you are all going to be faced with tax increase in probably next year, and tax increase every year as long as the 2050 plan in its current, the way it is currently, is in effect. I am supporting the changes that are being made at this time, but I also think they're too little, too late, and I don't think anything is going to change as far as the financial stability of Sarasota County. And Sarasota County has been in a downward economic spiral for the last 8 years. And the other thing that you have is, I think with the 2050 plan, is I don't think that the banks will not finance any projects at this time, and I don't think they're going to finance any projects in the future.
I'll be brief. A couple of things. 2050 came into being in 2002. Several people sued the county over it because it was the end of life as we knew it. That stalled things for 2 years. It was bad. It was horrible. Some of the same people, and you spent several $100,000 on a lawsuit where you were right. Because some of the same people are now saying, don't change a thing, it's perfect. Look, we've had 8 You need to drill down to the numbers, and I apologize, but I'm an accountant. You've had 18% growth over the last 10 years. That's 1.8% a year. For the last 12 years, and next year, if this budget gets approved, your millage rate has stayed the same or gone down. We are now the second lowest millage rate out of 67 counties in Florida. Don't believe all the tintillating sound bites. If this good new development that's occurred over the last 10 years is costing all of us all this extra money, then how in the world did they manage to get the tax rate to go down? And the story about the reserves are gone, there are nearly $160 million in line item reserves. 100 million of those are catastrophic, not yet delegated, or rainy day funds. The sky, folks, is not falling. This is a great county we live in.
Well, I told you earlier I'm a journalist, so that means I'm a writer, but I'm not a very good reader. But I did take the time to write out my response to 2050. I've always taken the task as a journalist to listen to all sides before I formed an opinion of my own, because usually news stories are balanced, the right kind of news stories. They have both sides, and then the public decides what the truth is. So I've listened to a lot of sides. I've talked to countless number of people about 2050 and the changes. And first of all, you ought to know this, you probably do. In October, the end of October, the final public hearings will be held, and the final phase of the changes of 2050 will most likely be enacted. So there are going to be public hearings. Watch for those. If you have an opinion one way or the other, please show up. That's what our democracy is about. But here's my take on it. And like I said, I'm a better speaker than a reader, but I'll read this. First of all, this issue has been decided, most likely. It'll turn out to be one of the biggest issues this county's faced in the last 10 years. It'll have ramifications for 30 years in the future, or if not further, good and bad ramifications. This decision to make these changes, you have to understand they were made pretty much by 9 planning commissioners, 5 county commissioners, a handful of developers, a few major landowners east of I-75. And what this decision will ultimately mean is urban services boundary, the line, is pretty much going to be obliterated. It won't be there anymore. This will allow for a little more rapid growth, higher densities, without the previous requirements for truly affordable housing out there, wildlife corridors, previously fiscally neutral standards. So there are going to be big, big changes. But again, there are good changes as well. We know that development's going to come. Jobs are going to be created. Jobs for our children. Jobs for us. So there are going to be some good things. It's got to be managed properly. It's got to be tamped down to some extent. We don't want 50,000 more homes out there. I don't think anybody does over the next 10 years. But hopefully, if everything works the way it progresses, if the economy comes along, and if the right kind of standards are in place, we won't have the type of the fears that people have in Kona and other places that we've heard expressed in this campaign.
Yes.
I'd like to pinpoint something about this. Is it true that the new development that's going to occur on the other side of 75 is being exempt for impact fees, which ordinarily has been new developments have been required to pay? In light of all that you've just been talking about, that doesn't make sense.
First of all, there's no such thing in 2050 about impact fees.
And it's being done.
There's no such thing in 2050 about impact fees being
I may be
eliminated.
using the wrong word.
Okay, well, I'm trying to answer your question, and I'll try to give you a complete answer. If someone develops one of the hamlets, settlements, or villages that have been on the books since 2002, east of 75, that man or woman, or that corporation, is going to bring the water, the sewer, the reuse, widen the road, build all the infrastructure. It is simply not true that we all are going to pay for that. That is not true. I'll give you one quick example. Serenoa, just the other side of 75. 3 sections of land. A section of land is 1 square mile. All 3 sections paid about $1,200 a year because it was a sod farm. There are now 500 homes there paying on average $6,000 a year in taxes. $3 million. The houses are on private roads, Those people paid impact fees, sewer impact fees, water impact fees. Those people are paying user fees for water and wastewater. $3 million a year, every year. It's an annuity. And if they don't pay, we take their house.
In answer to your question, what you have in Sarasota County now is you have the impact fees. The impact fees have been lowered in half to try to encourage development. But I would encourage everyone in this room, the Sarasota County Planning Department has prepared a graph on the fiscal neutrality. And that graph shows that you start out with the developer paying 100%. And as you go down, as people buy houses and as they come online paying taxes and impact fees, at a point out there in the future, that the line is running steady with taxes. They come together, and fiscal neutrality has no impact on the development. And I would love to have the graph here to show it to you tonight, because it just doesn't happen. Fiscal neutrality, as it's being explained to the public, doesn't exist. Every development that's been developed in the last 15 years or so in Sarasota County has carried its own weight.
Well, here's my problem basically with 2050 in general, the changes that we're seeing come about. In 2002, we finished a long process of charrettes and hearings, and hundreds of people participated in the process, and it was very costly. And we came up with a compromise, a big compromise in 2002. It wound up actually being implemented around 2004, 2005. That's why we have a difference in numbers. But the compromise was between the no-growth crowd and the pro-growth crowd. And if you've lived here long enough, I've lived here 34 years, those two crowds have been here since 1980. They were here in 1920 when the Ringwings were here. They've been here for decades, for centuries. And the problem is, we finally reached compromise. It's something that both sides could live with. And now we're in 2014, and the compromise that we're seeing before us now is the compromise. Here's what I think compromise looks like. When you come before the county commission or the planning commission and you say, we have 15 years before you can apply for a second village in the central part of the county, east of I-75. If you apply for one village, the 2050 plan says you can't even apply for a second one for 15 years. That's a long time. And the development community rightly said, that's too long. So now it's eliminated. There is no time frame, there's zero. That to me isn't compromise. Maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years, something in the middle would have been compromise. That's what it would have looked like. Another thing out there, 50,000 square foot of retail commercial was required in the various developments, the villages and hamlets.